Welcome to Travel Market Life, your companion for industry insights and professional business development. Travel Market Life. Join us by webcast, video or podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Travel Market Life, our monthly review show. Yes, the loose women of travel are here to dive in and explore what's happening in the industry. I'm Ryan Haynes, your host, joined by Claire Steiner. You're back again. How's life?
Good, thanks, Ryan.
Been out and about?
I have. I've been doing with the travelling. Yeah, and I'm doing lots of events and this conference season, so it's all been busy. But
excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Over to Will Plummer. He's here.
I am. Very warm welcome.
And you've been out and about.
I have been very busy. Had a bit of a road trip, I guess, around North America visiting clients. Anyone that tracked it would realise that I don't have much of a sense of geography, but it was great seeing clients, great getting out and about.
And James Clark, well, you don't go anywhere, do you?
No, I do. I've had a nice summer holiday, the back end of summer. I've come back and then it's been conference season. I've just got back from Rome last week. I was two days there at the WTTC conference, which was excellent. And then, straight back into it.
Well, today we've got a guest. We've got Craig Everett building a travel business, and he's from HollyBob. And we're going to have a conversation with him. But let's first start, you say you've been out and about. It's conference season. I've come from the annual hospitality conference and the independent hotel show. There's a lot of conversation about this thing called I? Is it? WTTC, are they talking about it over there in Italy?
Yes, happy to kick off this one. AI, it was a hot topic at the World Travel and Tourism Council. The summit had some really good speakers, and they looked at not just how AI has evolved, how it's still evolving, and what that potentially looks like for the travel industry. And I think one of the really interesting points that was raised was what we all see as AI today is still in a very, very early stages. And what will happen in the next probably 12 to 24 months is a huge speed up of how it's integrated into the way we work and how we even use our mobile phones. As an example, imagine not even using an app like Uber. You'll just ask your ChatGPT you've got this scheduled in your diary. I've organized your Uber for you. It's outside waiting for you. It will become pre-cognitive in its thought process. It will be looking through your diary, planning your days, planning routes for you, providing you updates before you've even thought of them. It's quite incredible.
I mean, I know announcements come out as we've been recording this, which means we're going to sound a bit outdated by the time people listen, but Booking.com and Expedia have now plugged into ChatGPT to be able to help out with those itineraries and be able to find and source those products. And then there's a lot of conversation as well about how hoteliers can plug into the LLMs for that agentic AI bookings in order to make sure that they're part of that booking process and not being bypassed. And the question, as you say, is it the end of apps and websites?
I mean, personally, I don't think it is yet, but it is coming. I mean, it's interesting you raise sort of agentic commerce. I've had lots of conversations. I was at Hedner a few months ago. I struggle to remember now. And that's very much the conversation, is how that trend is going to shift, how you're going to have an AI agent actually make bookings. For me, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I mean, from a payments perspective, there are all sorts of challenges in the real world where proving whether it's fraud, whether you've actually got a card holder, we can't even solve that right now. We're going to throw in an agent, an AI agent. What's that going to look like? But that is the direction of travel. And I think there is a lot of opportunity coming up. Again, the conversation is, what does it look like in the hospitality space? What does it look like for an OTA? Because I truly believe that agentic commerce, the improvement in payments, should have a shift for hotels to more direct bookings. But then the OTAs will almost be this really powerful search tool and this search engine. And so there's a lot of sort of interesting times ahead as to how that evens out and what that looks like.
Okay, right. We don't blow your minds just now. Let's go back to basics. So, Claire, you're trying to figure out what ChatGPT to use.
Yes. Well, listen, as an independent, I do use it a lot, right? But I think my challenge and what I'm seeing, and I just bringing in, I completely agree with what James and Will have said. But from an HR perspective, well, my biggest concern is that regulation isn't keeping up with the pace of change. So what we're seeing is businesses are starting to get, rightly so, quite nervous about the application of AI in the workplace and people using it properly. So there's a lot of work to be done, and it's so fast paced that can businesses keep up with the pace of the change? We know the governments are trying to regulate it anyway, but again, governments are so slow. So businesses behooven, if that's a word, to really sort of push the agenda out and to protect their IP, to protect their staff, and all that sort of stuff in terms of the use of it. So it's an incredibly useful tool. I'm finding it incredibly useful. I'm still learning it. I've always been a bit of a technophobe, but I am finding it very useful. But I'm working a lot with my clients about how we actually protect their businesses and put enough, I guess, sort of, protection in place.
Remember when we all grew up and we had encyclopedias and then they brought along Encarta? Remember Encarta, the CD-ROM that we put in? And I remember at the time at school, they were like, no one can cheat and use Encarta to get all the information. You have to read the books. And then the World Wide Web came around and everyone was like, hold on. You're using the World Wide Web, you're cheating online, then Google advanced things, and then you had Wikipedia and all these. It's just how we are. We're evolving all the time.
Well, I wouldn't say we're evolving if we can't relay and memorize information.
No, I think what it does is it helps people do their jobs. We've had this conversation already from editing emails, proof checking, helping coding. But to Claire's point, I agree. There needs to be probably some form of bumper rails added to businesses to ensure that their employees are using it in the right way and it doesn't cause both damage to the business, because especially around copyright and IP and things like that. And also remember, these are learning models. The more that people use them and put into them, the more the models are learning. So there are settings within these models that you have to ensure are switched off to ensure that some information isn't shared and collected and reused.
Yeah, and certainly my enterprise clients, don't want me using it for certain things. And like we had a big board member announcement the other day, and they did not want me or anybody to be using it just in case that information got out there somehow. So we still got a lot of understanding and learning, but at least it can build holiday itineraries, right, James? I'm off to Madeira. Yes. I've got mine. Where are you off to?
Next year is planning my US road trip.
Yeah. Day by day.
50% of people now use AI to help build their trips.
There we are. Just plug into Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, or whoever else you want to be using. Claire, there's quite a few out there for you. Okay. You have to pay a subscription now, I'm afraid. It's not free. It's not like the internet. It's not like www. anymore. Anyway, right. It is time to introduce our guest of today, building a travel business with the CEO of HollyBob. We have Craig Everett. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been an exciting start to the morning, so excited to get into the conversation.
Yeah. Sorry you have to sort of sit on the outskirts and just listen to us.
That's very interesting.
Warble on for a little bit. We all want to obviously get some of your thoughts about where our AI is with HollyBob and what you're doing. But first, let's just go back to basics. Now, you are quite obviously a very young entrepreneur. You have built seems to be, quite a strong business. But tell us about HollyBob. Who is it? Where did you start? And how did you end up where you are today?
Good question. There's quite a lot to unpack in there. But HollyBob, to begin with, we call it an e-commerce engine for experiences. So experiences for us is wine tastings, walking tours, Eiffel Tower tickets, anything that you do when you're on holiday or you're kind of in destination. So restaurants, live events also come into that. And our background is we started a ski tour operator when we were at university, and we thought that was too much like hard work. So we needed to get into the tech business, and that's what HollyBob does. Is we basically help consumer-facing travel businesses to upsell and cross-sell experiences to consumers when they are about to travel or when they're in destinations. So an example of one of our clients would be Secret Escapes. They have travelers going around the world to incredible different destinations. You book your hotel and your flights with Secret Escapes, and HollyBob helps in that post-booking journey to upsell and cross-sell experiences. And it's really interesting for a consumer. What it might look like is you get a WhatsApp, you book your hotel and your flight to Paris, then you get a WhatsApp saying, hey, James, welcome to Paris. We know you're staying in the Ritz with your wife and your 4 kids. It's obviously kind of money bags here from a travel zoo. But we found some great experiences for you and the family to do when you're in Paris because we know it's raining this week. So it's trying to be, super convenient, super curated to the end consumer and really helping consumers to have an incredible experience when they are in destination.
Excellent. So much in there, as you say, for being able to help businesses be successful. But going back, rewinding to those days when you first set up your first business. So it was in ski and you were at uni, you were coming out of uni. How did this all come about?
So Angus and I, my co-founders, actually met on the first year university ski trip. So we were the only 2 first year university. I don't know if I should say this in a public forum. We're the only 2 first year university students to go, not knowing anyone else. So we kind of got bundled together as the 2 first years, and we wanted to go on the ski trip, but none of our other university mates wanted to go. So we met each other there, and we went to Glasgow University. Now, the problem with going to Glasgow University, there's many great things about going to Glasgow, was that it's a long way from the Alps, right? So we had to get a 30-hour bus from Glasgow to the south of France or wherever it was. And, when you're 18 or 19, it's pretty good fun, 10 beers and then you have a wee sleep, 10 beers and then you have another wee sleep and then 10 more beers and then you arrive in whatever ski resort you're going to. But in our final year at uni, we thought, we're too good for this. We need to do something else, something bigger, something better. So we organized a ski trip for kind of 42 of our friends to go out to Tignes. Crucially, we flew there. So we arrived in Geneva and we got a transfer up the hill. And we stayed in this unbelievable kind of 20-bed chalet hotel in Tignes. And you can kind of imagine the face of the chalet hosts when 42 university students from Glasgow come marching off this coach, thinking we're gonna own this place. And we did own the place, but we had a great time. And then the kind of summer after we ran that ski trip, we had lots of friends of ours reach out and kind of go, oh, can you help us to kind of book our ski trips? And that was on the back of us having this kind of flat Instagram account, which went viral when we were at university. That was a completely different story, but kind of that precipitated a lot of the traffic or the inquiries. And we ended up selling £500,000 worth of ski trips to mates of mates in a kind of summer. And we thought, my God, there's more to life than becoming accountants and salespeople. So we went and started Whiteout Ski, which was the kind of first business that we started, dealing with the PTRs, bloody trust accounts. We were working with Gary Lewis and the team in terms of actually kind of looking after consumers' money. And then we had an absolute disaster where we tried to organize a ski trip just before the pandemic for a group of 120. And then we had to cancel it the day before the trip started because the kind of borders were shut, and then we kind of pivoted into HollyBob. Anyway, there's a bunch of different stories, but it was really around trying to have an incredible experience with our mates and then getting lots of other mates to have an incredible experience at the same time.
What was that process going from doing this a random trip of 40 odd people to then actually, oh, this has got to be professionally done? What was that moment, that turning moment?
Well, the philosophy we live by and we continue to live by is ask for forgiveness, not permission. So it's kind of get after it, kind of get as many people who are interested in kind of skiing and great ski holidays, and then figure it out as you go. And the one thing about being a young entrepreneur is that you kind of don't come into it with any preconceived ideas of what's right or wrong, which is kind of not right or wrong in kind of the moral sense, but what is the right way to do this, the wrong way to do that. So you have to learn, and that means that you have to be a sponge for knowledge. You want to have conversations and understand how does the industry work. And I think that stood us in very good stead for the years of business building that we've done since, because we are hungry to learn about the industry and all the people within it and all the different layers to it and all the different what's the difference between a tour operator and a travel agent and an OTA? And, there's all this terminology that, we had no idea about, right? We didn't know what a trust account was. We didn't know how to protect consumers' money. We didn't know who ABTA were. All of this stuff you have to learn. But when you're building a business, you're going to be wrong a majority of the time. So the most important thing you can do is learn as quickly as possible. And I think being a kind of young entrepreneur and coming in and trying to learn really quickly stood us in very good stead for what came afterwards.
Where's most of your learning come from? Have you had particular mentors or people that have really sort of guided you, or you've gone to and said, I really don't understand this, or can you give me some guidance? So what's your advice there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, most of there's a bit of nepotism in there. So Alex Saint is the chairman of HollyBob now. He's the CEO at Secret Escapes, and he's been a very long-term kind of advisor and supporter of HollyBob. And interestingly, he went to the same school as Angus did about 20 years previous, and we got introduced to him. But other people like Steve Endicott, who people will know, we reached out to him on LinkedIn years ago, and he's been a very good kind of advisor in his own kind of way around just like trying to help us meet new people, understand what the industry is all about. And then you've got to do it yourself. Get out to events, be there, be present, shake hands, say hi. I think I met most of the people in this room through various events. I don't know how we met each other, but probably after a few drinks somewhere in some destination, shaking hands, going, "Hi, I'm Craig, nice to meet you." And I think that you've got to kind of get out there and be amongst it and kind of do it yourself. No one's going to do it for you. So you've kind of got to get after it.
One thing I will definitely add here, of all the industries, the travel industry is very kind and very forgiving. When people go create their own businesses, their competitors, we all stay very friendly. We help each other. We support each other. You wouldn't get that in a financial institution. You wouldn't get a banker who left Barclays, go set up his own banking and go, "Oh, hi, can you introduce me to all your friends and colleagues?" It would never happen. The industry is very good like that. Do you not agree, Claire?
I do, absolutely. And I think our industry is particularly good for entrepreneurs, actually. I think there's always a little angle, and I think we've seen a lot of very successful entrepreneurs, some not so, but HollyBob's a great example of success. And actually, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, I guess, looking back at yourself, and if you take yourself back, if you were to start again now, what advice would you give to you as a young entrepreneur in terms of not necessarily mistakes you've made, but, what maybe what you did right, or, because I do think there are a lot of people out there who are going, "Oh, I've always thought about it, but I'm not quite sure where to start."
I think now my advice would be kind of try and be more focused on the problem you're trying to solve. But that's because, over the years, you get distracted by this shiny thing or that shiny thing, and you lose focus on the kind of the real core of what you're trying to achieve. And it's just a classic entrepreneurial mistake. It doesn't matter whether you're young or old. People go into business and there's loads of exciting opportunities, and you end up chasing things that you shouldn't. So my one advice would be like, figure out what problem you're trying to solve, like become super laser focused on that problem and solve it. But that's really easy to say in hindsight. It's very difficult to do in practice.
But then you wouldn't be where you are now if you'd done that, because you'd still be selling ski holidays, wouldn't you? And I think
sure.
I like the whole attitude. I had a similar sort of start. You've got to go out and try it. I think too often you see companies that create something, go out and find investment, and they haven't even sold anything. They haven't even done anything. I think you've really got to get out there, try it, and prove the concept. And, if it fails, pivot. And I love that. So
I think I kind of say a bit is like, you're going to make 49% of your decisions wrong and 51%, you hope you make 49% of your decisions wrong and 51% of them right. And you hope within that 49% that one of those decisions doesn't kill you, right? And part of the skill is trying to figure out which decisions are the really important ones and which ones you kind of... But I think that's leadership more generally, actually. I think people that proclaim to know everything and, pretend that they're making all the right decisions all the time are talking nonsense, right? Everyone's making it up as they go along. Doesn't matter whether they're CEO of X business or kind of sales exec there. Everyone's kind of making it up as they go. So get out there, try it, give it a shot. If you fail, it's a long life.
I absolutely agree, yeah.
So you then made up HollyBob, which is there to support businesses, travel businesses then actually grow and cross-sell, as you said. Tell us a bit more about sort of like the mechanisms of HollyBob and how and where it particularly helps businesses out there who are looking to grow.
Yeah, so obviously the experiences space, if you look at travel more generally, kind of flights, hotels, car hire, insurance, all of those segments or those verticals have been digitized and distributed online for the most part. Experiences remains the kind of final vertical of the industry that hasn't really been digitized and distributed digitally. Now that's changing quite quickly, and with some of the kind of changes in AI and the tooling, it's moving very, very fast. But for a lot of kind of travel businesses, the reason that their customers travel are not to kind of sit on planes or lie in hotel beds. It's for the stuff that they get to do when they're in Antalya or they're in Madeira or they're on their US road trip, right? So for a lot of travel businesses, they've never touched that in-destination part of the consumer journey because it's a very fragmented supply chain, contracting kind of jet skis in Madeira versus the Eiffel Tower versus, all the restaurants in Las Vegas. Like, it's a very diverse and complicated supply chain to aggregate. So HollyBob brings all that into one place, to one marketplace, and then we help our customers to give their travelers access to that content. And when you look at how consumers buy experiences, 70% of experiences are sold within 72 hours of consuming them. So 72 hours before you kind of actually go on that experience, 70% of the stuff is actually sold. So that means that you're either just about to travel or you're in destination, which is a very different type of sell. Like, if you're an OTA, you're trying to bring millions of people to your website for then 1% of them to buy a kind of hotel and a flight. Whereas for experiences, it's like very late in the funnel. It needs to be very convenient because you're time poor as a consumer when you're in destination. And it needs to be very curated because it's a massive opportunity cost-driven sale. If James is in Paris with his 4 kids at the Ritz, he wants to make sure that he doesn't go on a terrible walking tour tomorrow because that holiday is the most valuable time of his life or the calendar of his year, right? He spends the rest of his time working. So you need to help that consumer to find the things that are most relevant to them. And that's really what we help our kind of partners to do by driving convenience and curation for the end consumer.
But tours and activities is a market with huge challenges, mainly technological. If you look at the big tours, the Eiffel Tower, Tower of London, they're the ones that tend to be, the operations of those tend to be more technologically advanced, but that's a saturated market. And then as you spread out for the more interesting things, everyone's trying to find that next niche tour that you can sell, the Airbnb experiences, the Get Your Guide, I forget what they call their sort of... Originals, thank you. It's that quest for the next thing while still having the technology with the provider to be able to deal with that. How are you seeing that in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive challenge. Still 50% of the supply is completely offline. So dealing with spreadsheets, paper diaries, things that you think are kind of archaic, and we're talking about agentic AI, and how are you booking your surf lodge in Morocco when the guy's using a kind of Excel spreadsheet to manage his diary, right? So there's some really interesting challenges about that, or around that kind of area. Now, the honest truth is that, for the people who use paper diaries and Excel spreadsheets, they're going to have to digitize if they want to be a part of the kind of modern world, because there's platforms like us who are trying to help access demand by kind of putting experiences in front of consumers. Consumers are going to be buying this stuff digitally. Therefore, they have to become digital first. Now, I've not got the answer to that, and HollyBob's not really focused on that in terms of, we are not a reservation system for experiences operators, but there's, lots of businesses that are trying to digitize that market, but it's not easy.
And I think and this is talking from my own experience here at Travelzoo, where the consumer is continually leaning towards is the more authentic experience in resort. So to that point, yes, you can go and do an Eiffel Tower tour, which is your one straight off the street, or can you have that more authentic tour from someone who's going to give you a different perspective of that trip, that experience?
And I guess as well, as a travel agent, what is it you're trying to supply? Exactly. Who is your customer? And you're able to better connect with them.
I want a slight segue on that, because of course one of the big growth areas we're seeing as based around sustainability and things like that is the whole under tourism as opposed to over tourism. So how are you kind of capitalizing on that? Because there is there is that adventure tourism, that experiential tourism, but a lot of that is driven by this under tourism. So yes, if you're going to go to Paris, of course you're going to see the Eiffel Tower, but actually there are so many other areas that have focus to try and drive the tourists into these other areas, away from these overcrowded areas.
Yeah, I think it's really a responsibility of us, our digital platforms, to work with tourism boards and DMOs to think about how do we kind of help them to disperse tourism within that ecosystem. But that has to be a collaborative effort, right? Because I think that if you look at dispersing tourism, you need those authentic long tail suppliers to be digitized. And that's really where I think DMOs and tourism boards can lean in. because they can have, in my view, part of their mandate is to educate and mature the industry within that ecosystem. And I think a lot of them have done not enough in that space, right? It's very much been heads on beds, like paying for tour operators to bring headcount in, not actually focusing on the experiences and the longer tail, the SMEs who operate in those markets. And I think that's beginning to change, and that needs to continue to be the case. You look at Visit Scotland, they've been doing a lot of work in terms of campaigns in Scotland to try and digitize the industry. And I think that needs to be more broad, because ultimately, if tourism boards can digitize those supply chains, then platforms like HollyBob can help to distribute that. If those ecosystems aren't digitized, then we're hamstrung in terms of what we can do in terms of helping to disperse tourism across those ecosystems.
I'd like to turn a bit more about sort of the old building a business, being entrepreneurial today. How do you feel the climate is currently in being able to support and nurture and bring out new entrepreneurs, that there is opportunity for people to develop an idea and grow it in today's current climate?
That's massive. I mean, because the amount of disruption that's going on with AI, if you can build an AI first business, there's lots of incumbents who are, speak to James, right? I'm sure that he has board meetings, a lot about, what are the threats to our business. And because people can build websites and infrastructure and communicate with consumers at a speed that was like unimaginable kind of, even 6 months ago, right? So you can build a huge amount of infrastructure very, very quickly. And when you're talking about AI and agentic AI, if you look at kind of MCP, which is model context protocol, and this is getting very technical, but there's going to be an ability to build like an agentic AI OTA where you're just bringing together inventory from HollyBob, from Booking.com, from Expedia, from X, Y, and Z in days, right? And then it's about how do you take that product to market, and how do you get in front of consumers, and what's the value that you add. So for entrepreneurs, like times of disruption and instability are times where there's huge amounts of opportunity. So really exciting, for the rest of us, it's a bit terrifying because we're as HollyBob is a startup, scale up, but kind of has a bit of legacy at this stage. We're 5-6 years old. We're in a much better place to innovate faster than others, but that's still really challenging for us, thinking about how do we change our business to be kind of relevant in this AI first world. Whereas if you're starting with a blank sheet of paper, you can move remarkably quickly in this world. And also the amount of kind of funding and venture capital that's going into AI first projects is remarkable as well.
And you've got to be into technology. It's all got to be based around technology. When I first started booking sports tours, we used to send faxes off to make reservations.
Grandpa.
I'll take that.
I think it's interesting, right? I think that, people are trading in experiences more and more. Like the day you said you were kind of reading MasterCard data about this, and people continue to buy and sell in more experiences and be interested in more experiences. But are people going to have agentic tour guides, right? Or are people still going to want Pablo or something to show you around Barcelona, because you get that really authentic first-hand experience of Barcelona? And I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. So I think there is still a world for people to build businesses around creating incredible, authentic experiences. Because, in my opinion, agentic tour guides, they might have a place, but they're not going to be the whole market. But I think, in terms of in the technology space, there's a huge amount of disruption and a huge amount of opportunity for people who do want to build tech businesses and, focus on leveraging the latest tooling, be it AI or kind of whatever else there may be.
Yeah. And I think with what will happen, if we go forward 20 years, 30 years, is it will be lost. That expertise will be lost. You won't have Pablo in 30 years' time, because there won't be a new Pablo being born today who wants to devote their time to understanding everything around the Sistine Chapel and take those walking tours around Sistine Chapel because they know everything about it, because that person's not going to be born, I don't think. And what would be enlightened to say, this is going to be my career. I'm going to be one of these local guides. I think that will fade out.
The same goes in hotels and hospitality, right? Is that people want to give that people service, and I can't also see robots replacing people in a hotel reception or walking around a hotel in a luxury resort where you want a person to serve you.
But don't you think there'd be regression though? You look at the travel agent. You're booking your trip through ChatGPT because you've given her a nice voice or something, but ultimately, I think people are going to come back and they're going to go, well, that's great, I've got this advice, but I want a human to tell me they've been there, they've felt it, it's the right fit for me. And I think ultimately, yes, there'll be a period where, that personal guide will potentially fade out and be replaced by someone or something agentic, but then it will come back because people will want that human interaction. That's how I feel. Maybe it's a generational thing.
I don't think we can be generalistic about it, because one thing we do know is that currently desktop is still the lead channel for booking and for revenue generation, and that mobile is delivering inspiration. Influencers are there to connect us in some way with what's going on. The significant growth in actual real human travel agents, but then it's people's independent, autonomous version of booking. If we want to book something ourselves, do we want to go through the rigmarole of opening a multiple number of tabs and going through a long booking process, or just use an agentic AI? So I think it's for a particular audience, for a particular purpose, for a particular reason. I personally don't see it being all encompassing. And as we go back to the whole point, the reason you grew your business, the reason you've been so successful is not because you read a load of books, you watched a load of YouTube channels, but you spoke to people in our industry. You went out there and met them, and you got an understanding of how you could build a successful business. And so it was beyond technology that led you to the success of HollyBob. It was about really understanding the nuances of what the product you are creating and how you're supplying it.
I think business is still a relation, especially B2B, is still a relationship-based game, right? People buy from people. And I think we're a long way away from businesses having AIs speaking to other businesses, AIs to make purchasing decisions, right? So, I can't see my AI reaching out to Travelzoo's AI to be like, hey, we're reaching out from HollyBob, we've got this tool. And then, Travelzoo's AI, great, give me the numbers and the proof. Yeah, we'll buy that. Like, I think there's still a very, we're a long way away. But in the B2C consumer-facing world, where, you can build a tool or a website or an agent or whatever it is, that can go viral very quickly and scale. And you don't have to speak to anyone to do that, right? You can do that in your bedroom with, two of your mates if you want to. But I think the other thing about travel is just remember is it's such a fragmented, complicated supply chain that it's not really easy to just kind of go and contract all the hotels or all the experiences or all the restaurants around the world. That takes time. There's a huge amount of defensibility built in there. So the platforms like the bookings and the Expedias and the hotel beds, where that inventory lives and a lot of the bookings and transactions are kind of made, I don't think those businesses are going to be kind of immediately overnight kind of disrupted. But, it's interesting to think about where it goes. And I don't have the answer, obviously. It's just
you can't predict, right? Because you read different things in the press all the time about the next generation, the alphas coming through. So, there's predictions that actually from a consumer behavior will change and that people will be much more relaxed as they are already with using technology and having AI do all of this for them. I agree with you totally on the B2B. But actually what we're also hearing is that a lot of them are saying, well, I want to have the people experience that my parents had. Because, my generation, we're all like, I want to speak to a real person. That's what we're used to. But then the next generations are used to doing everything online and using social and all that sort of stuff. So they're much more relaxed about it and are much more au fait with it. So we're seeing a kind of a double thing coming through at the moment. Certainly what I'm reading is that some are saying, well, like James was saying, we'll see them disappearing because there's just no need for them anymore because the younger generation aren't, and are not in that way. But actually, we're also seeing them sort of saying, actually, no, I want that personal experience that my parents had that I'm not getting. So it's going to be, I think it's interesting times.
Also
I just don't
vintage
know.
Now, isn't it? I mean, it's incredible when you do see people The youngsters now, they're going out there to the vintage shops, going to secondhand shops. They're sort of reliving my youth, which is
Which means
wonderful
we're
to see.
vintage, by the way,
Which
Brian.
means
I'm just saying.
most definitely vintage.
Back to your fax machine, Ryan.
And actually, I was speaking to a chap this week who has taken his son's smartphone off him and given him one of the old Nokia brick phones and said, that's all you're having from now on. But we're having that discussion in schools as well as to sort of when is enough when it comes to tech. And I'm certainly seeing my niece and nephew of 12 and 14 want to be out on their BMXs at the weekend rather than sat in front of the screen. And is that a result of too much during the pandemic and it's now got the rejection? We're perhaps moving into a little bit more around the societal changes, but what I wanted to really obviously explore there with Craig Everett from HollyBob was building a travel business. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and what's really helped make you your businessman that you are today and build your businesses and the insights of how some of our listeners can also do the same.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I've been your host, Ryan Haynes, with Claire, James and Will. We'll be back very soon with another monthly review. Check it out and don't forget, subscribe for the latest events and podcasts.
For more, go to Travel Market Life. The music sensation by Zach Nelson is reproduced under license from Storyblocks. Travel Market Life is a Haynes Marcoms digital marketing agency production, serving the travel and technology industries.